So, new reaction to the arrests of accused Capitol rioters connected to the targeting of news crews and destruction of camera equipment and other media property on January 6th. My next guest co-wrote this for the Washington Post: prosecuting assaults on journalists protects our democracy. And joining me now is Laurence Tribe, university professor at Harvard Law School. He's also an author and constitutional law expert. Laurence, awfully good to have you on the broadcast here. Look, politicians routinely use the press as a punching bag, but you're saying the problem arises when those actions are allowed to go unchecked.
That's right. When the press is not only a punching bag, but is called the enemy of the people. And when vigilantes are basically stirred up, whether it's the Proud Boys or any other group, the Oath Keepers, are stirred up by no less than the President of the United States to attack not only the Capitol and the Capitol Police, but the journalists who are covering the event. And it's really about time that the Department of Justice went out of its way to identify those attackers of the Capitol who threatened the lives and safety of journalists who are performing an absolutely crucial function in our democracy. It's the only private institution mentioned by the Constitution, the press. The freedom of the press was recognized as indispensable to a democratic system of government, as indispensable as votes and as peaceful transitions of power. All of those were under attack on January 6th.
Yeah, pretty extraordinary. As I was looking, you rather succinctly drew this string of names, all of whom have tried to limit the press and put restrictions on them. Putin, Chinese President Xi Jinping, Jair Bolsonaro, Mao Zedong, Stalin, Mussolini, also having used the phrase fake news. And then you parenthetically say, hey, sound familiar? Yeah, no, go ahead.
You left one out, Alex. You left out no less than Adolf Hitler, who went after the critics in the Munich press. It's a standard autocratic technique. You go after the critics, you silence them, you use them as punching bags, you kill them, you assassinate them, and then you take over and hold on to power. And if you're voted out of office the way Trump was, you claim that it was a fraud, and you try to make everybody who voted for you think that they're victims, and you try to get back into power. You claw your way back in, and that's what this ex-president is trying to do. Well, he's trying to foment violence even now.
On the heels of that group of names, let's talk about Donald J. Trump. And you write that his years of aggressive speech, that may have played a role in the attacks on the media. But how far does free speech take him? And can he ultimately be held accountable for the actions of others because of what he said?
Well, there are several things involved there. For one thing, it's not just speech. In this case, the things he said were part and parcel of the attempted takeover of the Capitol. It's like, you know, your money or your life. That's words, but it's also a holdup. So he was engaging in speech, but not really in advocacy. He was using speech to rile up the mob. Besides, the First Amendment is there to protect private speech against the government. He was speaking at that time with the voice of the government. And ironically, he is now saying that the voice of the government has become Facebook and Twitter. And he claims somehow that the First Amendment gives him a right to be on those platforms as though they were the government. He's got it all upside down.
So, Laurence, the DOJ has actually named Trump. They've cited his false claims about the election, this in a legal argument to try to keep an accused Capitol rioter under monitoring. Does that connection create any legal jeopardy for him?
Well, it's at least an indication that they're beginning to connect the dots. That is, if it is the case, as the Department of Justice has asserted in saying that somebody ought to be constantly monitored and not trusted to be completely at liberty, if they're saying that part of what is fomenting violence even now is the claim by Trump and some of his followers that the election was stolen, and if that is fomenting violence now, then the claim that it was all stolen and that the mob should use force to prevent the transition of power to Joe Biden by interrupting the counting of the electoral votes on January 6th. All of that seems to be part and parcel of a violation of a very important federal criminal law that goes back to the Civil War era, that is, 18 U.S.C. 2383. It's a law that says anyone who gives aid and comfort to an insurrection against the United States government, whether in words or in action, shall be imprisoned and never again eligible to run for office. And that law, I think, may well apply to Donald Trump.
So you mentioned Twitter. We know Trump is crying censorship. He's suing these social media platforms for banning his accounts following the January 6th insurrection. He's not the first person to have their account locked. Does any user have absolute rights on these platforms, or does the fact that these are privately owned companies, or those that are, does that give them some level of insulation from that?
Well, it makes it clear that they are not subject to the First Amendment. They are subject to various contract rules. They perhaps can be sued for breaching a contract with their users, although Congress has given them quite a bit of immunity. But what you can't do is pretend they're the government. They, in fact, have rights against the government. One of the difficulties with these really powerful platforms is that we don't have any meaningful way to regulate them. There's this joke of a oversight board that is accountable to Facebook itself. But self-regulation is not going to solve the problem. We may need a regulatory structure, but whatever structure we put in place has to respect the First Amendment rights of these private entities. In his op-ed on the subject, Donald Trump said, they're like the newspapers of old and the television stations of old. Well, yeah, but newspapers and television stations, though they can be subject to antitrust and other regulations, have First Amendment rights. Nobody has an automatic right to be on your program or to have an op-ed in the Washington Post or to be on Fox News as a commentator. Trump is simply making up a body of law that doesn't exist. And then in order to make it sound sensible, he says in his op-ed and in the papers that his new lawyers have filed, he says that the government is coercing Facebook into kicking him off, or Twitter. There's no evidence of that the government is using any power. It doesn't have any power right now over these organizations.
Yeah. Well, let me make it official. You, my friend, do have a right to be on my show anytime you want. I appreciate your scholarly insights, Laurence Tribe.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.